You know, I have a soft spot in my heart for healthcare professionals and frontline workers. My guest today went from a career in healthcare to running a Canadian quilt product distribution business. But there's so much more to that story. Today, we are getting a glimpse into a day in the life of a quilt product wholesale business owner who's had a lifelong love of textiles. Today, I'll have a chat with Gail Heller, the owner of Erie Quilt Art. Welcome to the Quilter on Fire podcast. I'm Brandy Maslowski, and if there's one thing I've learned from hundreds of conversations with quilters, artists, entrepreneurs, and makers from around the world, it's this. There isn't one right way to build a creative life. Some of my guests found quilting as children, others discovered it later in life. Some are building businesses, some are winning awards, and some are simply making time to create between work, family, and everything else life throws in their way. What they all have in common is a willingness to stay curious, keep learning, and keep making. Each week, I bring you honest conversations, practical insights, inspiring stories, and the occasional lesson learned the hard way. So you can spend less time wondering what's possible and more time creating a life you love. Whether you're stitching in your studio, driving to work, walking the dog, or dreaming about your next quilt project, I'm so glad you're here. Let's light that creative fire together. My guest today is Gail Heller, the owner of Erie Quilt Art Inc, based in Calgary, Alberta. Gail spent years working as an intensive care nurse and a manager in the medical industry before shifting her focus to the quilting world. She started out representing fabric lines and eventually established a wholesale company that distributes top-tier quilting and sewing products to businesses across Canada. In addition to managing this business, Gail is a teacher and certified Aurifilosopher. She supports and mentors small businesses and quilt shops across Canada, and she is even a notion inventor. And we'll get into all of that today. Gail, thank you for sitting down with me today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandy.
Well,
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. This is going to be a great conversation because we're talking about products that we know and love, or new and exciting products we haven't seen before, and how they come to us from the wholesale level. So I want to start by taking a look back, though, at your personal journey. So where did creativity begin for you?
I think it was always within me and sort of nurtured from the time I was little.
Yeah.
My grandmother, my Polish babci, was a quilter and a crocheter. And from the time I was a little girl, I'd remember going to her house and I would say, babci, babci, I want to see your quilts. And she would bring quilts out of every closet in the house. They were hidden everywhere. And she would pile them up on the bed so that I could see them all. Never had any idea that I would quilt. I just thought, this is just cool. This is what my babci does.
Yeah.
And she crochets while she watches her soap operas. And my grandma Heller was a knitter and a painter. And my mom was an amazing seamstress. And I never took a home ec class. My mom said, take music, take phys ed, take other things. I'll teach you everything they can teach you in home ec. And she did. Mm-hmm. And so from the time I was probably 12, I was making my own clothes. Didn't start quilting until my daughter was born. And in between that, the other sewing thing was, I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool I've always had an entrepreneurial streak. And so as a hobby, I decided to start a little business. Shortly after I was married in the late 80s. And the business was called Maggie Muffin Kids Company.
Aw.
I think this one's news to you too, Brandy. I don't think you've heard about this one.
It's a cute name.
So it was dolls and clothes to match.
Aw.
So the way I say it is, I was American Girl before American Girl.
Oh, yes. Canadian Girl.
Yeah, there is a Canadian Girl now. And but I didn't continue with it because it started just before I had my daughter, but I had this fabric left from it. And so when my daughter was born, my mom said, Gail, you should take that fabric and make a quilt. And there's a great quilt shop in town. We were living in London, Ontario at the time. And there was a wonderful shop, the quilt shop, one run by Willie and Lou. And she said, I think that you should go take quilt classes. They've got I think it was a 10-week course where you go for an afternoon. I'll come and look after the baby. And you just have to promise to teach me to quilt. I think it was just an excuse for my mother to get to spend an afternoon a week with the baby without me around.
Oh.
But anyway, I went to the class and in short order, I was hooked and haven't looked back.
Oh, wow. And so you have loved quilting from such an early time. Can you give us a look at the timeline of your educational and career path that eventually led to this business in quilting?
Sure. I graduated from university. Now you're going to know how old I am in the late 70s. And I graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Nursing, became an ICU nurse at Toronto General. And there we worked ICU and recovery. You do a few months in ICU and then a month or so in recovery just to give yourself a mental break. And that was
Wow.
awesome. Did that for a few years. While I was there, I discovered medical device companies
Yeah.
and the fact that they had salespeople who didn't really fully understand what it was we did and what we needed to know about products. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if there was actually somebody who understood the ICU working for these companies? So I went out and started to knock on doors and talk to people. And of course, back then they said, well, you're a woman. And I went, yeah, I actually am. And so they said, well, we're not sure if women will do well in this field.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, that was like waving a red flag to a bull. I thought, you betcha I'll do well. And so I said, well, what do I need to do? And they said, well, you need to work for a pharmaceutical company for 2 years to get sales training. And it's helpful if you have a business degree. So I immediately signed up to do my MBA part-time, and I got a job with a pharmaceutical company. And almost 2 years to the day, I moved to medical device companies.
Wow.
And I started with Bard, and I was their marketing manager for surgical products, and then moved. Once I finished my MBA, I was recruited by Medtronic, who is one of the world's leading pacemaker manufacturers. And I became their Canadian marketing manager and on the worldwide marketing team for pacemakers. And then I was married in the late 80s, moved to London, Ontario, where my husband was teaching at the Ivy Business School, and did a few different things there. Decided we wanted a family. I was in my 30s at that point and thought, well, I guess I better get going on that if we're going to have a family. And so did some consulting, did some teaching, taught marketing, wrote some strategy courses and corporate governance courses and a marketing course, and did that for a bit. And then the man I'd worked for, my mentor really from Toronto, came to London as the general manager for Trudell Medical Marketing. And at that point, I'd had 2 children. That was the early 90s. My daughter was 3, my son was 1, and he came and said, I want you to be director of marketing. And I said, I have 2 little kids, and that requires a lot of travel. Thanks, but no thanks. I think I'll just keep doing my part-time teaching and consulting because I want to be a mom. So about 2 weeks later, he came back and said, what do you want to I really want you to do this, Gail. What would it take? And I said, well, I work no more than a 50-hour week. I travel no more than 10% of my time, and that includes locally. And I said, and if I work during a weekend, I get extra time off for my kids and I get 6 weeks vacation.
Wow.
And thinking he would say no. And he said yes. So I went, okay.
Oops, be careful what you ask for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I did it, loved working with him. It was a wonderful company. I worked with them for a few years, and then John, my mentor, died suddenly. I then became general manager, which it became pretty clear that I was going to have to up my travel. In that industry, in those positions, your travel was about 80%. So Mitch, who was the owner of the company, asked if I wanted to apply for the position. And I said, I can't do it. I want to be a mom, and I'll stay in my role if I can stay under the current arrangement. So I did that for a bit. And then the new person came in and unfortunately had no understanding of women in the workplace, wanted me to travel 80% of my time. And I said, nice knowing you. And I
Mhm.
left.
Yeah.
So then I went back to doing some teaching and a bit later on and some consulting. A bit later on, I decided I went to work for a home care organization and was the director of what they called partnerships and qualities. So managing home care agencies, et cetera, for Southwestern Ontario in Canada, and did that for a few years. The bureaucracy drove me crazy. I'm a person who likes to see a problem, solve the problem, all in very short order. That's not how it works in a government managed organization.
Hmm.
So I left that and decided, okay, what am I going to do? Really didn't need to work. It was about, and I remember at the time my husband saying, well, just do something you enjoy. And I had started quilting, as I had said, when my daughter was born. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just rep some fabric lines. So I thought, which lines do I love? I loved Liberty of London and I loved Kate Fassett, which was Westminster Fibers at the time. So being bold as brass, I called up J.N. Harper, Gary Harper in Canada, who is the distributor for Liberty, and called Westminster Fibers and said to both of them, do you need a rep in Southwestern Ontario? And to my surprise, both said yes.
Mm.
And so I began repping fabric. So Gary was great partner. We still have a great relationship to this day, and the two companies work well and have a great respect for each other. And I every time a new fabric line would come out, I would say about the individual fabrics, that's a winner, that's a dud, that's a winner, that's a dud. So after a few months of this, Gary said, would you come with me to Quilt Market? Because you seem to have a real eye for what's going to do well. Because when you say that, that seems to be what happens. So I went to Quilt Market. And while I was there, I was like a kid in a candy store. That was in Houston that year.
Yeah.
And I saw all of these amazing threads and notions and patterns that I hadn't seen in any of the quilt shops I had visited in Ontario, and I'd visited quite a few. So I said to Gary, would you mind if I pick up a few lines on the side while I'm carrying fabric and just kind of have my own little, notions distribution business on the side? It was never meant to be anything more than this little hobby.
Mm.
And he said, sure, go for it. Have fun. So I did. I picked up the first line I picked up was actually Superior Threads. Spoke with Bob and Heather, who owned the company at the time, and they did not have a distributor in Canada at the time.
Yeah.
They had some retailers who were sort of acting as just quasi distributors. So did that. And then because I have this belief that you need to understand your products that went back to my medical days, I went down to St. George, Utah, and went on the superior threaducation classes so that I would know everything there was to know about the thread, and I could educate quilters and shop owners in the basics of thread, really.
Yeah.
Not just superior thread, but helping people to understand the characteristics of thread and what you would use different threads for. So did that, and it really was something that was on the side. It literally started in a small closet in the upstairs of our house with
Hmm.
a few shelves. And over the next few years, it just started to grow. And I picked up another line and another little line. And then it was years later, so around 2014, actually a few years before that, life happened. My marriage blew up, and one thing led to another, and I decided to relocate to Calgary. At the time, neither my daughter nor my son were planning to stay in Ontario. My son thought he'd be on the West Coast. My daughter thought she'd be in the States or in Europe. And I thought, well, so there's nothing holding me back. And I decided to move to Calgary. I've always loved it out here, loved the mountains. Went to my kids and said, what do you think? And they said, go for it, Mom. The funniest part is since then, my daughter has moved out west. She's now in Edmonton. And quite to my surprise, although it all makes sense now, my son is still in London. even though he said eventually, and I think he'll be in London for a very long time, if not for life. So I'm back there quite often to visit him and visit other family and friends. Long story short, when I decided to move to Calgary, I thought, okay, what am I going to do? I was teaching at the university, at Western University. I was teaching marketing. I was doing some consulting. I thought, well, I could teach out here. I could go to either Mount Royal or U of C. So I did talk to a few people about teaching. And then I honestly don't know what made me do it, but I thought, you're teaching people about marketing and small business and entrepreneurship, and you have this small business and you really haven't done anything to make it grow, but it's growing anyway. So what would happen if you actually put some time and energy into it?
Mhm.
So I made the decision that I was going to give it 2 years. That was in 2015. I moved in the fall of 2014. And then I was supposed to have a warehouse, but the day I was to move in, the owner said, I want you to rent twice the footage at twice the price. And I said, thank you, but no. He thought I would be stuck and would have to do it because I had a moving van sitting there. I said, no, thanks. So I moved everything into the basement of the house I was renting. And then within a few months, found a warehouse, which is where we stayed for about 10 years.
Wow.
You had been to that warehouse, Randy,
Yeah.
the smaller warehouse. And so we
Yeah.
were there for 10 years. And my 2-year time limit it worked. And
Yeah.
so it just continues to grow. We continue to add lines. We just moved last year to a new and bigger warehouse, and we're continuing to grow
Wow.
and having fun.
That is quite a story. You've certainly come a long way. And from a point where you never expected to have this as your career, and look where you are now. Well, that's really exciting. And I really want to also take a look beyond the business and talk about your personal creative practice. I mean, the next few questions could be about how you bring things in for the business as well. But I want to talk about when inspiration strikes with you, what does your process look like if you're creating your own quilts or art quilts?
It's a combination. I like to put pencil to paper, as you put it,
Yeah.
and do kind of a rough sketch of what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
I will use EQ if it's a pieced quilt. I've designed a couple of quilts on EQ that are my own design.
Yeah.
And other than that, it's also just playing with color and pulling fabrics and becoming inspired by the color.
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by color. I like to say I think in color.
Mm.
I'm one of those, I'm very fortunate that I do think in color. I can have a dress and think I need a scarf that goes with that dress. And without having the dress with me, I can go to a store and pick out the exact color I need.
Yeah.
It's just in my brain somehow.
Yeah.
And it seems to be more intuitive. Yes, I've taken color courses and worked with the color wheel, but I still go back to intuition, and it always seems to work.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does. And so I want to go a little bit further into your teaching and speaking, because your business keeps you so busy in the wholesale industry side of things, but you also teach all over Canada and you do lectures and everything. So what kind of teaching do you offer?
So most of what I do right now is Aurifilosophy sessions for Aurifil.
Yeah.
So in 2017, we became the major distributor in Canada for Aurifil thread.
Mhm.
And that was another, I always say be open to opportunities and just be open, and
Mhm.
things will find you. And that was the perfect example with Aurifil. One of my customers in Calgary had said to me, you should be carrying Aurifil thread. And at the time I thought they had distributors in Canada, and they did. And I said to her, well, I don't poach other people's products. And so they have distributors. I would love to have it because I personally love the thread. And she said, well, it never hurts. You never know when things change. It never hurts to talk to them. And I thought, oh, okay. So when I was at Quilt Market, I went to the Aurifil booth and saw Elena Grigati, who's the USA president and now oversees all of Aurifil, and said to her, I just wanted you to know that I absolutely personally love your thread. I think you've done an amazing job. It's the best thread I've ever used. And she said, oh, do you have a shop? And I said, no, I'm actually a Canadian distributor. I know that you have distributors now. I just wanted you to know that I love your thread, and left it at that. And she said, do you have time for a coffee? And I said, sure. So by the end of coffee, we laugh now because we said we felt like we were sisters.
Mhm.
We have the same philosophy of business, the same um, sense of ethics, et cetera. And they were in the process of making a decision that they wanted their distributors to not also be retailers. And so the two distributors they had at the time had a choice of whether they stayed as retailers or became full distributors of the thread. And as it turned out, both decided to stay as retailers, which opened the door for us to become the Canadian distributor for them.
Nice. Well, that's great.
So that was, so I teach. And so when I brought that on, similar to what happened with Superior Threads, I thought, well, I need to know everything about Aurifil. And Aurifil shortly thereafter started the Aurifilosophy program, which is about teaching quilters and shop owners about Aurifil. And so I do a lot of Aurifilosophy sessions, both in person and by Zoom, to guilds across the country and for shops.
Mhm.
One of the things I do, because I believe understanding what you're selling is really important, is anytime a shop purchases a thread display unit from us, they're entitled to a complimentary Aurifilosophy session from me.
Nice.
So it's worked out very well, and it's so I do that. I also, one of the early lines we picked up was Studio 180 Designs, Deb Tucker's tools.
Yeah.
And again, I wanted to learn more about the products. So they they developed a certified instructor program. I attended their first certified instructor program in North Carolina and became a Studio 180 certified instructor.
Yeah.
I kept that certification for a few years. I haven't gone back to renew it, but I still know the products very, very well. I will do trunk shows for Studio 180. I will do classes on Studio 180 products. And I've done them both by Zoom and in person. I don't have as much time to travel around and do things in person, but
Mhm.
Zoom's made it very doable. I can teach a 3 or 4 hour class without having to worry about the 12 or 20 hours of travel and so forth that are involved if you're traveling to do it in person.
And speaking of travel, you are about to embark on a travel trip across Canada, teaching and speaking and Quilt Canada and everything. So by the time this
I am.
podcast airs, Quilt Canada will be over. You might even be
It
back
will.
home from this trip. But
I should be.
yeah, give us a glimpse into some of the stops along the way.
So I was married last October, and my
Mhm.
husband is has moved from the UK to here to be with me, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And I said to him, if he's applied for his permanent residency, and I've said, well, if you're going to be living in Canada permanently, you need to know Canada.
Yeah.
So we have driven to the West Coast and over to the island. This time we're going all the way to the East Coast. So
Wow.
we're leaving next Monday on the 15th of June, and we're driving to Winnipeg for Quilt Canada. And at Winnipeg, I will be doing Studio 180 demos in one of my customers' booths,
Mhm.
in Fabricana Wim's booth. And then from there, we're continuing on to Ontario, where I have a few Aurifilosophy sessions booked in person in shops, and then onward to Quebec, New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. We're doing it all,
Yeah.
and we'll be gone for a total of 7 weeks. So it'll be a combination of doing some talks and teaching events, but then also just meeting with shop owners and talking to them about how we can best help them. Because my main philosophy as owner of this business and everyone who works here is of that same mindset, is our jobs to help our customers be successful.
Yeah.
And if they're successful, we'll be successful. And
Yeah.
so that's what this trip is about, is connecting with our customers and helping them to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I want to mention your website here. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, gosh, I've never heard of Erie Quilt Art, it might be because you're a customer, right? And you go to quilt shops and you don't actually buy things from a wholesaler or a distributor. And so the website is eriequiltart.com. And when you hop over there, you'll find quilting and sewing products, patterns and kits, thread, rulers, and more. But keep in mind, this is a wholesaler, so they don't sell direct to customer. If you see something you really love on the website, find it at your local quilt shop or encourage the quilt shop to bring that great new product in store. And one more note, Erie Quilt Art sells to quilt shops all across Canada, of course, and many of those shops do sell to the US as well. So if you're listening from the USA right now, you should inquire in some of those wonderful Canadian quilt shops because they may just ship it right to your doorstep. So, Gail, back to the story. What does buy Canadian mean to you? Because a good majority of your products are Canadian.
So I wouldn't say a majority are Canadian, Brandy. It's we we purchase and support as many Canadian businesses as we can.
Yeah.
A very, very small portion of the industry is actually made in Canada products.
Yeah.
I could probably name them on maybe two hands.
Yeah.
In terms of Canadian production, there's Best Quilt Knit Sew, which is Acorn pressing products are Canadian.
Yeah.
Soak Wash, Soak and Flatter products are Canadian. There is Wonderfil, which is a thread company, and Thread Medium, and they also sell merino wool. They're a Canadian-based company,
Mhm.
but nothing is manufactured in Canada.
Yeah.
There are pattern designers who are located in Canada, and we carry many of those. We carry Modern Blended Quilts. I know you've had Susan Madu on your podcast.
Yeah.
Tamara Kate Designs. I believe you've had Tamara on. Blanket Statement, Artie's Quilting. There are many, many pattern designers, and I'm sorry if I'm not naming all of them, but we do work with them.
Yeah.
And then we've also dabbled a bit with wanting to do some on our own. So.
Yes, yes. And we're going to talk all about that in a little bit. So I really like the fact that you think Canadian, you try Canadian, you do the best you can to be Canadian, and you also have things that are available through quilt shops to the USA as well. So it's good.
Well, and I think the things I would say to Canadian quilters, because there's a huge buy Canadian movement. And I suggest to quilt shop owners, you might even want to have a little section in your store that is the Canadian made products. It will be a very small section in the shop.
Yeah.
However, as a Canadian quilter, you are supporting Canadians and Canadian businesses when you're supporting your Canadian local quilt shop. They're employing people in Canada. They are keeping our economy going. Canadian distributors are keeping the economy going. So by supporting those businesses, you are in effect buying Canadian. And the other thing to remember is that even though many of the manufacturers are from the US or from Europe or from China, they have all been instrumental in making our industry what it is, and inventing products and developing products and moving this industry forward. And because of political issues, we don't want to be turning our backs on our friends either.
Yeah.
So it's important that continue to grow and be developed.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about a project or quilt that's been especially meaningful to you. You mentioned to me in the past, failure is not an option. So tell me about that one.
I think that one speaks to me for a few reasons. Failure is not an option. Feels like a bit of my mantra.
Yeah.
But it was also an Apollo statement. So it was Apollo. There was my daughter's university training was in aerospace engineering.
Okay.
And she, from the time she was 12 years old, she would read mission manuals for fun.
Wow.
And so she watched the movie, she read the manual, and there was a quilt contest that Suzanne Miller-Jones put on for a book she was creating called Fly Me to the Moon. And so I decided that I would create an Apollo 13 quilt, which was failure's not an option. And so the story behind that was, which most people know, is that there was the mission was to go to the moon, but they had a major issue on the way, and there was an engineering fix that made it possible for them to get back to Earth. They didn't actually get to the moon. So the art quilt I created was depicting that trip that was meant to be to the moon, but came back to Canada. And the other thing that I did that was special to me was that Jacqueline, my daughter, had told me that, what most people don't know is that a lot of that fix came from a group of Canadian engineers.
Mm.
And so I thread painted an engineering ring and a little Canadian flag
Oh.
into the piece, as well as a nod to Canada's role in getting those astronauts back home safely.
Oh, it sounds like a meaningful quilt for sure.
It was very meaningful to me, and it will be Jacqueline's quilt, of course.
Yeah.
But it
Okay.
traveled around for a bit. It was in the book. It was
Yeah.
accepted as one of the entries into the book, and it's pretty exciting to have it
Oh,
there.
oh, yeah. What a great story. Okay. So, what does community mean to you, and how is that infused into your business?
Community is very important to me. I believe in supporting the quilting community by supporting our quilt shops, support our guilds as we can, support individual quilters as we can. I think that the quilting world is a really unique and wonderful community, and it brings happiness to very many people. It brings happiness to us who are quilting. I have a little sign in my studio that says "Stitch your stress away."
Yeah.
And that's what quilting does for me. It calms me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't sit still very well, and as you know, Brandy, you've seen it.
Yeah.
I think it came as a surprise when Steve and I were married, and we would watch TV in the evening, and he said, I was stitching for a bit, and I finished the project, and he said, "Oh, so you're done, so now we can just sit and watch TV for the next while." And I kind of went gulp.
Nope. I
And
gotta
I thought,
find
well,
something else.
we are newly married. I probably should humor him a little bit here. And so I said, okay. So the first night I fell asleep, missed the whole movie. The second night, he called me Fidget Gidget because I just could not sit still. It was just making me crazy with nothing to do with my hands.
Yeah.
The third night after dinner, he said to me, "So, what project are you working on now? What stitching are you going to do tonight?"
He got the picture pretty quick.
He did.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I want to touch a little bit on your philanthropy because you've mentioned to me before that you have donated for breast cancer research. But the one story I want to touch on is you mentioned to me the Quilt of Remembrance Day. So, what's that all about?
So that happened, back in 2007, I believe it was. I was repping fabric for J.N. Harper at the time, and and Gary Harper had been looking for a philanthropic project and said, we need to find something that's going to be meaningful to us.
Yeah.
And as it happened, a woman named Edith Soignier, who was ex-military, had approached Gary with a pattern that had been developed by Pam Bono in the US, and it was of poppies. And she said to Gary, I think it would be wonderful to have this quilt designated Canada's Quilt of Remembrance Day.
Mm.
So Gary called me and said, what do you think about this? I said, Gary, you just found your philanthropic project, and I'll run it for you if you want. So we put together quilts that we sold all across Canada, and a portion of the proceeds from the sale of those kits was donated to support veterans and their families through the Royal Canadian Legion. And I made 3 of those quilts. One is in the Royal Canadian Legion headquarters in Ottawa. One went to Harper's, and one is in my possession. And the one that went to the Legion headquarters, I had a number of family and friends who contributed to making of that quilt. So it would be about community and even more meaningful. And we presented that quilt to the Legion at a Remembrance Day ceremony in Ottawa at the luncheon for the Silver Cross Mother. And that was very meaningful and wonderful. And since then, um, through Erie Quilt Art, we've done a few small things. We were a growing, sort of burgeoning company, and so there hasn't been a huge opportunity as you're trying to grow and develop to do a lot of philanthropy,
Yeah.
but we've done a bit, and we've supported Quilts of Valor. I felt that I really have a special spot in my heart for veterans. So I
Mhm.
have uncles and a grandfather who were veterans of the First and then Second World Wars, and just believe, and friends who've served in the military, and just believe it's a very worthwhile cause. And so we've supported Quilts of Valor with thread for their booths at conferences. We created an Quilts of Valor thread collection, which we sold. Um, and we've done a little more there, raising money for breast cancer. It was interesting. It was a couple of years ago at Quilt Canada, and we had brought in a number of these Bowen pin cushions that were pinks. And it was interesting because they had a pin in the center that was intended to represent the nipple of a breast. And we actually had a hard time selling some of these pin cushions because people were like, I can't sell a pin cushion that looks like a nipple or a breast. I
Yeah.
thought, okay. So we had all of these pin cushions, and so we took them to Quilt Canada, and for a donation, we we had them at our booth and allowed people to donate, and that went to breast cancer research. And that was an important one to me and to my team, because at the time we had two of our team who were breast cancer survivors, and thought,
Mm.
that's a wonderful cause, and it honors them and their journey as well.
Yeah. So nice to do that together as a team. Okay, so let's get into a couple of quotes that you love. So the first one is, "If you're going through hell, keep on going," by Winston Churchill. So what does that mean to you?
That quote that came to me when my marriage blew up. A very good friend of mine sent me a card, and it said, "When you're going through hell, keep on going."
Oh,
To Winston Churchill. And that just really struck me. And I thought, yep, it might be tough now, but there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. And certainly there is.
yeah.
And so that's became one of my mantras, is that, if things are bad, it means that you just have to keep going until they're good again.
Yeah. And look where
So,
you are now with your wonderful Steve, who's a chocolatier.
yes. Yes.
That's
Yes.
my favorite part about him is he's the chocolatier. And every time I've come to visit, you've spoiled me rotten. So that's been wonderful.
Aw.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
have
he
a
does
second.
love it. He hand paints these beautiful
Yes, I
chocolates,
know.
and
I was
the
so
chocolate
impressed.
lab is in the downstairs of the house because
Yeah.
I don't dare have it upstairs readily available because they're so good.
Yeah, I was very impressed. The flavors and the colors and the painting on the chocolates were very, very beautiful. So you had a second quote that you wanted to talk about as well, and it goes like this: "There's always an option B, and it could even be better than A." And that's kind of just, is it anonymous or is that just something you've said all the time?
Yeah, it's not a quote in particular.
Yeah.
There was a book that was written years ago called Option B that I read
Okay.
shortly after my marriage blew up.
Yeah.
And then it just became for me, yeah, there's always different things. And I think it really spoke to me because it really embodied what I've done in my life. And
Hmm.
just, my option A was be an ICU nurse for life. But then option B became available, and then that became option A. And then the next thing came up. And one could say I'm a squirrel, which is
Yeah.
probably true.
Yeah.
Uh, but there always seems to be some logical progression to what I do. And it's just another option. So I've always believed if something's not working, try something else. And it probably will be better for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've already talked about the why in your business. You mentioned earlier in the podcast that your mission is to help quilt shops in Canada be successful. I want to talk about, over the pandemic, you started doing something wonderful for quilt shops on Zoom. So let's just dive into that a little bit more.
Okay. So when the pandemic hit, the announcements were all, it'll be a few weeks that we're in lockdown.
Yeah.
As a former ICU nurse, I thought there is no way it's a 2-week lockdown. Anyone
Yeah.
who understands medicine knows that this is going to verge on to 2 years.
Yeah.
But there's no way any government's going to tell you up front it's 2 years, and they may not believe it themselves, and they probably didn't.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought, oh, no way. This is going to be a long haul.
Yeah.
And so we started getting phone calls from customers saying, please hold on my order because we're just going to close the shop until the pandemic's over.
Oh,
And when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, if you do that, you're going to be out of business.
yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I've now's the time to use my coaching abilities. In the past, I had also done some coaching of small businesses in various industries. And I thought, well, now it's time to really put those coaching talents to work and coach my customers into how they can get through the pandemic. So I started doing Zoom sessions once a week. And those sessions were based on how do we survive the pandemic. And they were complimentary sessions. Any and all shop owners were welcome to attend. We talked about the practical part of it. We talked about how do you keep your staff safe? We talked about how do you make sure your customers can still purchase from you even though they can't come into your shop. So we talked about doing FaceTime lives. We talked about iPad shopping trips in your shop. There were numerous things that we brought forward.
Yeah.
Many of the quilt shop owners were a bit afraid of the technology. And oh my gosh, well, that sounds great, Gail, but how are we going to do it? I said, well, you're going to get some N95 masks, and then you're going to call the local high school because there are a bunch of bored high school kids who know way more about technology than you do. And you're going to ask for one of those kids to come in and set you up with a FaceTime live station with all the technology you need. If you need a website, because that was the other thing, many had to develop websites. Many shops didn't have websites until the pandemic hit. I said, find someone who knows it and get them to do it. And then you can do what you do best. So that was the first thing. It evolved a bit into some business training, and a friend of mine, Bruce Cruikshank, we had done business coaching, small business coaching together with the company we were working for. And I asked him to come in. I said, I can do this, but it's going to come better from someone else. And so he came in and he did sessions on sales, on marketing, on cash flow management and hiring and firing, et cetera. And so every week there was a different topic. Gradually, as people, as things settled down, they went to monthly sessions and then eventually dropped off. We started again this spring and we've taken a bit of a hiatus. We'll start again in the fall.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is we will have a business session where there'll be a topic. We're also inviting some of our suppliers and pattern designers to come in and talk about their products. So
nice.
And to do some demonstrations so that there's a bit of a teaching about the products themselves, but then also some general business teaching, and then opportunities for the shops to talk about what are their issues? What are the things they're dealing with? One of the big ones was tariffs. We talked about tariffs when we brought it back a few months ago, and what does that mean for you? And what do you need to know? And what does the fact that de minimis is gone mean? And so on. But so that's something we'll do more of. And once we're back from our cross-country trip, we'll start doing those on a monthly basis again.
Yeah, it's such a great service to provide to your customers. Okay, so right now we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk all about Gail's studio space where she creates, what brings her joy, and what's coming soon. We'll be right back. Quilters and quilt shop owners, can we talk for a second? We hear you're looking for more Canadian products for your shops. You want to support Canadian, but don't know where to start. Enter Erie Quilt Art, a Canadian distributor of quality quilting notions and patterns that makes it easy to find Canadian products. With an easy-to-navigate website and a dedicated section for Canadian, shopping Canadian has never been easier. Carrying notions such as the Acorn Precision Piecing System and the Creative Mediums by Wonderfil, and patterns by the Blanket Statement, Modern Blended Quilts, Tamara Kate Designs, Art East Quilting Co., and more, you're sure to find plenty of Canadian inspiration. Head over to www.eriequiltart.com to get started. Shop owners can place orders directly from Erie Quilt Art, and quilters can ask your local quilt shops to bring in the products you wish to purchase. And we are back with Gail Heller. Gail, what does your studio space say about you?
It's my refuge. It is my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
It is very small. You've seen it, Brandy.
Yeah, I have.
It is, and for people to picture it, when you walk into some houses, there's that little office on the main floor of a house.
Yeah.
That's my studio, is that little office. But it works. It works really, really well. I have IKEA PAX units on almost every wall, with drawers and shelves. I have my sewing table with my Bernina sewing machine that I love. I treated myself to a new Bernina a little while ago. I'm one of those people who work with one machine only until it dies or is about to die, but I love my Bernina.
Yeah.
And I have a combination cutting table, pressing station. It's a counter height cupboard unit I found on Wayfair, and Steve helped me to create an ironing top for it, for a pressing station. And then behind that, because I didn't have a wall because of all the shelving units big enough, we mounted an automatic. It's like almost like a projector screen, but it is a design wall. So it rolls up into the ceiling, and then when I want my design wall, it's automated and it just comes right down. My quilts can stay on it and store in there until I'm ready to go to my design wall again. I toyed with the idea of blowing out the wall between my sewing studio and the guest bedroom behind it. And then just decided, I think that just might be too much space and I don't really need that. I would probably expand into it, but did I really need to? So I'm really quite happy in my little space. It's on the main level. It's open to the living room. There's I can shut the French doors if I want to, but it's open when I want to be part of what's going on in the house, close to the kitchen. It's just perfect.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect spot. So what brings you the most joy creatively?
Color and design, if that makes sense. I would love to be doing more. So I want to expand more into art quilting. I did join your group this year,
Yeah, the
hoping
Fiber
that I was
Fix
the
Fam.
Fiber Fix Fam.
Yeah.
I did the first one. I had my sketches for the second one, and then life got crazy, but I will do it. I will do them all. It's a fun thing to challenge myself to try different techniques.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I like variety as well. And I don't know, I like everything from applique to piecing to freezer paper piecing, EPP. I never thought I'd be an EPPer until the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And then I was.
Yeah, fun. Well, and if you're listening right now and you're thinking, what's Fiber Fix Femme? I haven't mentioned it a whole lot on the podcast. So I'll just do a quick little recap of what that is. It's a monthly creative project that I devised with my good friend Mel Beach. And we simply make a postcard each month. And there's a midnight prompt on the first of every month. And it's a whole lot of fun. So you can find that on my website if you're interested. But yeah, we've been having a lot of fun with a lot of people and just getting those creative juices flowing, right?
It's very cool.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the best thing you do for your own self-care?
I get out into nature, I think would probably be the best thing, either being in my backyard or going to the mountains. Both Steve and I love going to the mountains. So just going to the mountains, even if it's just to walk around or drive around or have a hike. And if there's mountains and water, I'm a really happy person because I love both mountains and water.
Oh, me too. I love nature. Yeah. Okay, we want to talk about a couple of projects. There's patterns that you got into studio. They became Studio 180 patterns, if I'm correct. So let's talk about those two projects. One's called Beach Days and the other's called Northern Lights.
So that started a number of years ago. Deb Tucker decided through Studio 180, they were going to publish some books on Hunter Star, which was their first tool. And so she challenged the certified instructors to come up with a pattern that could go into the book, and every pattern had to be different. There are so many ways you can put Hunter Star together.
Yeah.
So I submitted it's a medallion style quilt that I called Beach Days.
Mm-hmm.
The name came because it had those sort of beachy colors, the pinks and blues and sands. And at the time, I was living in a house overlooking Lake Erie in Ontario, which is also how my company got its name.
Yeah.
And so that was submitted, and it's in Hunter Star Hidden Treasures. It's in that book. And there are, I think, over 30 different patterns. And then a couple years later, and they were all lap quilt sizes in that book. A couple years later, Deb decided that she was going to create a book that was going to be queen and king size quilts, and challenged us again to create patterns that could go in this book, but none of the designs could be the same as the 30 designs in the first book. So I had been up in Northwest Territories in Yellowknife teaching and found some beautiful Northern Lights fabric. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do a Northern Lights quilt. So I created a Hunter Star pattern quilt called Northern Lights, and it was accepted into the book.
Yeah.
And so that was in Royal Treasures.
Yeah, those are some great little milestones. And so another thing I wanted to talk about, it's kind of like the feature of the whole podcast, actually. It wasn't enough to just have leading edge products and all the things that you offer in your business. You had to invent your own rulers. So tell us about the 20 sizes of rulers that you invented yourself.
Okay, so this has been something that's been in the back of my mind for quite some time.
Yeah.
As a quilter, I do appreciate a good ruler.
Yeah.
And it seemed like, ruler A would do this, but not this. And ruler B would do this and not this. And I thought, gee, I should just come up with my own ruler that does it all.
Yeah.
And it never sort of hit the top of my list. And then we had the current administration in the US came in, and the tariffs became an issue, and Buy Canadian became even more important to quilters and to quilt shops. Everyone was saying, what Canadian products do you have? And I thought, well, maybe it's time. And so I sat down and I took all of my favorite rulers, and put them down and took pieces from each. What did I like about each of them? And then added some things that weren't in any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was things like numbers on many of the rulers were hard to see or not big enough. Most quilters don't have the greatest eyesight anymore. So why would we make rulers with numbers that are hard to see when that's what you need to see to cut?
Yeah.
The other thing that was really important to me was having fine lines, because some rulers, where is that 1 inch mark? Because the line's so thick. Am I supposed to aim for the middle or the side, or what is it? And then the other one was that many rulers have angle lines so that you could cut an angled piece, but those angle lines went right to the edge of the ruler. So this was something that came from my Studio 180 days, is that there were many star blocks where you wanted to trim a block, but you wanted the 1/4 inch seam there. So our rulers have a 1/4 inch marking all the way around, and in the center, the angle lines come to the 1/4 inch line, not to the edge of the ruler. So those were some of the key things. We started looking for someone who could produce in Canada, and I was having a hard time finding someone who could cut and print the rulers in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so at one of the shows, we found a company in the US who was able to cut and print them. And they also had a non-slip coating that they could put on the rulers. So we initially had them cut and printed in the US. They were designed in Canada. They were packaged in Canada, labeled in Canada. And so they were more Canadian than any other ruler in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we had some quality control issues with that company, and I recently had to stop the production in the US. But it goes back to my option B is sometimes better than option A, because I found someone in Canada who could cut and print the rulers for us.
Oh, great.
And it's actually by the time this podcast airs, I'm hoping they'll be released to shops. I received my first prototypes last week.
Nice.
And we made a few little changes. I'll have my second ones delivered by Friday. And then I will be able to hopefully bring them with me on the road trip to show to some of the shop owners what's coming.
Oh,
They
wonderful.
will not have a non-slip backing, but people will be able to add their own, whether it's by dots or by sprays or by tapes.
Yeah.
But they will be 100% Canadian made.
Wow.
And then down the road, I'm hoping that we will be able to expand into another option of non-slip for those who want that.
Yeah. Well, what an exciting development. So we'll look forward to seeing those possibly at Quilt Canada if you have one in hand, but hopefully very much in the near future. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, I want to see these rulers when they come up, follow along on all the social media for Erie Quilt Art and sign up for their newsletter. You'll be the first to know. Okay, so there are also some great new products you picked up at H&H on the horizon that are going to be available in quilt shops soon. This is the big news. So tell us about some of those exciting things you found.
So one of the trends in the quilting world, and we're known for watching and learning and releasing things. Sometimes I release them too early for the Canadian market, but this time hopefully we're right on. It seems that hand stitching is becoming huge everywhere. And it was becoming huge in the US. Now it's even bigger. It's big in Canada as well. And so we're expanding to some of those hand stitching products. We added a line from Ukraine of cross stitch a few years ago, but now we're expanding upon that. And we've just confirmed that we'll be distributing Zweigart fabrics in Canada. So fabrics for cross stitch and needlework and beautiful, beautiful linens that you can also use in your garment making and bag making. So very excited about that. Our opening orders in, and that will be up on our website very shortly. By the time this podcast airs, it will all be there. We're also going to be distributing Latifa Saphir templates and patterns. Very excited about that. One of my team, Jose, has already made a sample of one of Latifa's quilts to hang in the warehouse, which is pretty exciting. We're adding a line of these wonderful, we're also expanding beyond just the needle arts to some of the knitting world as well. We'll have some knitting needles. We've also added kits by a company out of the Netherlands called Hardycraft. And they are beautiful crochet and knit little creatures like, ducks and moose and horse and just every little creature you can imagine. Really, really sweet. And we've also added Katie Cupcake, which is Quilter League greeting cards and stickers and badges and those sorts of things that are lots of fun. And many, many more. There are a few that are not 100% confirmed, but I'm confident they will be. But more and more all the time. It's been lots of fun developing all the new things.
Yeah, so much fun. You also mentioned a new scissor line as well, and that's a Canadian scissor line?
Oh, yes, absolutely. LDH Scissors. So we've talked to them. Love that company. They're a wonderful young couple. You had them on the podcast. I actually listened to that podcast this week.
Yeah, Ursula was wonderful.
Ursula and Roy, and a wonderful company. And I need to chat with them before I go away. They're on my list to make sure we can get that into our product offerings as soon as possible and support them as another Canadian company.
Yeah. And you'll see them for sure right away at Quilt Canada because I will be helping them out in their booth. We just had them on the podcast, so we'll be doing a nice feature. Ursula was a fabulous guest and she gave such great information, especially on how to care for your scissors. It was great.
I learned lots. Yes.
It was so good. Okay, so there's more coming in January, more products, but those are a secret, right? So you can't tell us everything. So
there's one that I'm so excited about, but we can't have it until January, but it's a really exciting one.
Well, that's okay. Secrets are good. It's fun to be waiting and wondering. So go to Instagram and Facebook and follow Erie Quilt Art and make sure that you're checking out their newsletter as well so that you hear the latest when it comes out. And quilt shops actually will be the ones who hear about in the newsletter, right? This is the
Yes.
newsletters primarily for quilt shops. So
Newsletters for quilt
yeah,
shops. And but on our website, we always have what's new on the banner pages.
yeah,
And so people will see what's new. And our Instagram and Facebook, we always announce what's new.
yeah, that sounds so great. Okay, so now it's time for the lightning round, Robin. It's fast and fun. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, what is your favorite tool or notion?
Rulers.
Rulers, yeah. Coming from one who was so invested in them that she had to invent some, I can understand why. Okay, and do you do any kind of annual creative escape?
I wouldn't say it's annual. I did it one time back when I was in Ontario. I'd have an annual escape, and I did have here prior to the pandemic, but I do have a regular escape with a group of friends. When I
Yeah,
first moved to Calgary, I had my cousin and a good friend. We would get together and have little quilting retreats and sew together and give ourselves workshops and so forth. And when I moved here, that was missing. And I'd gone to some guilds, met some interesting people, and I thought, I need inspiration. And so this one week, I sent out invitations to 8 people whose work I admired and who I thought would be fun to get to know, and said, "You're welcome for a sew day at my house on Sunday afternoon, and I'll make brunch."
aw,
And all 8 showed up.
nice.
And most of us have continued on as we've added a few, and a few have dropped off. But the core of us are still very good friends and get together on a regular basis to
Yeah.
stitch.
Oh,
And many of them didn't know each other, which was interesting. It was like, how have I lived here all this time and never knew you? And
yeah.
so it was a fun thing. So that's something for someone moving to a new place. Is I
Mm.
would highly recommend, if you need inspiration and someone to stitch with, just invite them to your house.
Yeah. Surround yourself with people who lift you up.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. So, what is a skill you'd love to learn?
I want to learn more art quilting techniques.
Mhm.
So I've learned some. Anna Buzzolino is one of the people I invited to be part of my group, and she's a wonderful art quilter with great techniques. And I've taken some classes from her and would love to take more and just learn more and more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna Buzzolino is one of my close friends, and
Yes.
you've actually given me a little nudge to announce it right here. We are going to Japan in 2027 in the spring. So watch the Quilter on Fire website and social media for that announcement. It's coming soon. We'll be letting everyone know at Quilt Canada next week, actually. And so by the time this airs, the news will be out, and you'll be able to already sign up for the trip. So very excited
And I
about that.
predict it'll be booked solid.
Yeah, it will be booked up pretty soon. My last trip to Scotland, it's just by myself, not with Anna, but my last trip to Scotland sold out instantly. So I'm so excited about this Japan trip. I just went in 2026 and I loved it so much that I'm going back. So
Oh,
if you've ever dreamed of Japan, join us. That will be so much
well,
fun.
and if you do one again down the road, I would love to do it. I think this one's going to conflict. I was
Yeah.
talking with Anna. I think it conflicts with my son's wedding, and
Oh no.
so no, can't miss that.
It's possible. We might do this one every year. It's so great. Okay, so let's continue on with the lightning round, Robin. What is your proudest accomplishment?
Well, I just said one of them, my kids.
Yeah.
My son and daughter are amazing, and they're what makes life wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of everything that they've done and who they've become. So yeah, that's got to be my proudest accomplishment. There are lots of accomplishments I'm proud of in my work life
Mhm.
and in my business, but nothing trumps my kids.
Yeah. Totally understand that. Okay. And what's the best advice you've received?
Probably advice I got from my mom years ago. And it was intended to be about relationships, but it really applies to just about everything. And her saying was, when in doubt, check out.
Oh, and what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, when in doubt, check out. If your gut's telling you this isn't good for you,
Mm,
believe your gut
yeah.
and don't continue on.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Great
And that
advice.
really applies to anything, whether it's
Mhm.
personal life, business life. If your gut's telling you, so
Yeah.
that one to me is very meaningful.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. And last question. Do you have any furry friends in your studio?
I don't anymore have my own furry friends. when the kids were growing up, we had a Cavalier King Charles who was lovely.
Yeah.
And now both my daughter and my son have dogs. And my daughter living in Edmonton has two lovely little dogs. Finn is a Cavalier King Charles, but a big Cavalier.
Yeah.
And then she also has a mini Aussie Shepherd. And so anytime they go away or anytime they need help, we take the puppies. Actually, they're coming for a vacation in August when my
Aw.
daughter and her fiance are away.
Oh,
So we'll
nice.
have them for I think 10 days in August, which is great. I've thought about having pets, but Steve has three boys in England. My son's in Ontario. My daughter's in Edmonton.
Yeah.
We're going to be over the next few years. I predict between weddings and grandkids, we're going to be doing a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
And much as we would love to have a pet and love to have a dog, we can't have our own. So we just look after others.
Yeah. You babysit your grand pets once in a while.
That's right. We have
Yeah.
grandpuppies.
Okay, so Gail, thank you so much for braving the lightning round robin. That was super fun. So I want to remind everyone of the website. So it is eriequiltart.com. This is where businesses and quilt shops can go to check everything out. But as a consumer, you can check it out too, but go to your local quilt shop to find the latest products from Erie Quilt Art and ask your quilt shop to bring something in if you see something special. Also on Facebook and Instagram, it's Erie Quilt Art everywhere. And Erie is spelled E-R-I-E. So my favorite things about those are the latest products that you bring to the table and the fun things that you're doing. So be sure to follow them. So Gail, we've had such a wonderful conversation about your journey, the path you've gone on, this wonderful business that you've built, but you're not doing it alone, are you?
No, I am definitely not. And I couldn't. I have an amazing team working with me. I have 5 individuals. There is Jose, who's been with me for 8 years, Meg, who's been with me for years, who looks after all the operations and the purchasing. Jose and Lindsay and Jazreen are our customer experience specialists who work with our customers and pull the orders and process the orders. And Sabrina is our marketing manager. And Sabrina does all the magic on the website, the social media, the newsletters, and has made such a difference in just how we're projecting ourselves and how we're communicating with our customers. So there's no way I could do it all. I'm so appreciative of all of them. And yeah, look forward to continuing on as we are. I think someone here the other day said, we have the dream team.
Yeah, you do. And I remember one time I reached out to you and I was like, I'm struggling with shipping. And you set me up with one of your team members to just have a chat about it. So I so appreciate that. And there's one more thing I would love to mention because that is the family too, right? So your family has supported you along the way. But I mean, how has Steve, renovations, he's just, he helps you out with everything as well, right?
Yeah, he does. He's been awesome. And yeah, definitely a part of the team. Not a legal working part of the team
Yeah.
because Steve has relocated from the UK and and so he is not able to work in the business even if he wanted to. But he's been super supportive and both at home and of the business. Yeah.
It's so nice to come home to someone who just, if he doesn't understand, he just lets you go, right? Let's just talk about it for a minute and make it happen. Yeah. I love
And I'm
that.
especially a happy girl when I come home and dinner's made.
Yeah. Oh, that is so sweet. Yeah. Well, we already talked about the chocolate that he brings to the table, and I was so thrilled about that too. But yeah, well, it's so nice to appreciate your team and hear you doing that. So thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. Now, as we wrap up, Gail, what do you want people to take away most from our conversation today?
I think that we have to be open to opportunities and always do what you love and love what you do.
Yeah.
I think that people sometimes have a fear of failure. I have a pillow on one of my beds that says, what if I fail? And then, oh, my darling, but what if you fly?
Yeah. Oh, I love that one. That's a really good saying.
So to me, it's always be open, take risks, do what you love, and everything else will just fall into place.
Yeah. And I love the part of that where you said almost like be prepared in case the opportunity arises, right? Just do what you love and then you'll be ready. I love that. What a great way to end the show. Well, Gail, it's been so great to have you on the show. Thanks for sharing your story with us today.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you so much for having me, Brandy. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at Quilt Canada next week.
Yes, I can't wait. Okay, so that was my show with Gail Heller. I really admire her focus on Canadian where she can, Canadian businesses, and how she supports the shops with Zooms on topics that really help them thrive. And I love that she has a focus on choosing products that are innovative, have a strong artistic flair, and simplify the process. And one thing to watch for coming up, don't forget, it's the new products. She found so many at H&H, and there are more coming in January. So sign up for that Erie Quilt Art newsletter if you're a quilt shop or business, and watch their Instagram as they announce each new product. And today I loved sharing the story of Gail Heller and Erie Quilt Art with you. Quilter on Fire is now on YouTube, and it's packed with brand new weekly content. What's waiting for you? Fun and easy tutorials to follow, exciting unboxings, exclusive interviews with top quilters and artists at the biggest quilt shows like Houston and QuiltCon. If you love Quilter on Fire on the podcast, you're going to be blown away by our YouTube channel. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Quilter on Fire on YouTube today. Let's ignite your passion for quilting. Thank you for listening to the Quilter on Fire podcast. Remember to rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps me reach more quilters just like you, striving for that perfect quilty lifestyle. Click on those 5 stars and share what you loved most about today's episode. Don't forget to hit the follow button if you haven't already. With new episodes dropping weekly, you won't want to miss out on the inspiring stories and tips we have in store. Until next time, dream big and have fun in the studio with the Quilter on Fire.